So I'm going to kick this off and put us in presentation mode. Now, if you've ever come to one of my events before, you should hopefully know that I can't stand PowerPoints. I'd rather show you a demo all day long, and I've got lots and lots of demo today. One of the things, I sent email out this morning to everyone telling you major changes from Microsoft that happened just last week. And interestingly enough, they happened at the Build conference, and Build is Microsoft's developer conference. Usually dev and analytics don't always fit in the same world in Microsoft, but one of the major announcements was changes that are going to impact Power BI. And they are phenomenal changes. I am not saying that I'm not a Microsoft employee anymore. I'll give you my history. I don't have to say nice things about Microsoft, but I watched it and was blown away. And so I do want to share some of that, even though it's less than a week old or right at a week old since the announcement. I'm going to try to put some of that new stuff in. So I spent the morning adapting my slides. So you're going to see some of that today. A whole bunch more of you attended. I appreciate it. We're now up to almost 20 people. So let's dive in and get going. As I said, we have a lot to do. In the invites I sent you, I always talk about, I spend 2 minutes just in sales mode so you understand who's Fuji. Fuji's big organization. We're about 600 people worldwide, offices in the US, Costa Rica, India. We use our Costa Rica office for running a security operations center. We do all the managed services and help for the US so we can be in the same time zone. Costa Rica is on the central time zone here in the US. Then we have a lot of developer support offshore in India as well. Bunch of fantastic technical people, data architects, cloud architects. You can see everything on this. But a really, really amazing organization. We do 4 things. We do digital product engineering, quality engineering, so test, dev. We help people kind of get all their development projects in order. Low code, no code, which you're going to see a lot of today. We do cloud services, everything from architecture, designing, and migrations. We do a full suite of security services. And most importantly for everyone on this call, tons and tons of data engineering, helping with visualization, helping building dashboards, creating the whole data pathway as it moves through your organization. Who am I? I am an ex-Microsoft employee. I was at Microsoft for 18 plus years, didn't quite make 19. Most of my time I spent as a technical resource. I was deep into SharePoint. I got started in Power BI in the very earliest days and made it a specialty of mine. I helped run the Microsoft Seminar division, so I helped create and run that for about 12 years. So if you've ever been to an MSDN, TechNet, TS2 small business group, used to be called Microsoft Cross America, that was a group that I was a part of. And one last thing I put in here, I'm a technology generalist. When I started Microsoft, I started in 1990. And the simple fact is we had to learn everything. I had to be an expert on Office as well as SQL Server and Exchange and Windows and networking and you name it. Nowadays, what Microsoft hires is specialists, people that are much smarter than I, much better looking than I, but their job is to understand everything about SQL Server. Boy, they know SQL Server to the infinite degree. The problem with that, and I argue as an old Microsoft person, Microsoft lost the ability to explain to customers how things interconnect into a solution. Whether it is, a solution that uses SQL Server just doesn't exist by itself. It's used to help run CRM. It's the database behind Exchange. So how the data flows together, I am a specialist on, and I'm going to spend some time making sure you understand that because I think it's so critically important. One quick thing, Fuji, I always want to point out, Fuji with an E. So yes, we are actually based on the mountain. We're not a Japanese company, but our owner, Manohar Reddy, just was blown away by Fuji. Everywhere he looked when he visited Japan, you have these gorgeous views of Fuji. And it brought up an interesting point. Fuji is not the largest mountain in the world. That would be Mount Everest. And I've got a picture of Mount Everest side by side. And I just throw this out because I think it was interesting. Fuji is so beautiful. I was trying to figure out why is Fuji so beautiful and Everest is just kind of this big set of hills. And the answer is, and it dawned on me, Fuji is a volcano. That's actually a satellite picture of Mount Fuji. And so what you see is this huge flat basin in Japan where there's no hills at all. And then right smack dab in the middle of it is this amazing volcano. And I didn't know this until I researched it, but that's why you get these gorgeous pictures of Fuji. So when you come to our website, just remember we got an E in there. It's F-E-U-J-I. Why would you come to the website? Well, there's tons of information. I have training classes that I teach, professional training classes. I've been doing it for 30 years. We've got these webinar series. There's just so much to kind of learn and do. So let's get into it. We're going to talk today about Microsoft Power BI, and we're going to talk really about some of the reporting aspects of this. And I'm making the case, and I feel very confident in saying this, that Microsoft is moving to a universal reporting platform that is going to be Power BI. I've gotten into debates with some of my Microsoft buddies and even ex-Microsoft employees, and they love SSRS, SQL Server Reporting Services. They've learned it. It's been the reporting tool for a long time. Go back even further than that, Crystal Reports. I mean, there have been a number of tools over the years that people have used to try to create and generate report quality materials. I'm not arguing, I'm telling you, it's all going away. Microsoft has already depreciated SSRS. What does that mean? It means when you install SQL Server, SSRS isn't even installed as the default anymore. It's there if you want it, but it's not automatically enabled when you install it because Microsoft is moving everyone to Power BI. And the purpose of my talk today is to show you why and explain how that's going to change the world. And then more importantly, like I talked about, they just announced last week, literally 5/23, so a week ago today, they just announced major changes to the data flow, data factory, data everything that's going to completely impact Power BI and the concept of having a unified universal reporting tool. Since there are quite a lot of you, we already have 27 people online and growing, we tend to keep the microphones all muted, but you can and should ask as many questions as you can using the chat window, using the questions window. If you look at the interface, you'll see there's a questions deal. If you'll post that, I have a separate window here. I also have multiple Fuji people on the call. Veronica is my cohort in crime, and she will be monitoring this and making sure that I see if there's a question, I'll stop. I'm not one of those presenters that say, hold all your questions to the end. Nope, ask them as soon as they come into your mind, because I bet it's a question that someone else on the call has. So the more questions you ask, the more you'll get out of this, the better the session will be. All right. We do have these technical Tuesdays. So every 2 weeks, I'm doing presentations. And this is the schedule as it exists right now. So we're doing Microsoft Power BI reporting. I've already taken off a couple that I've already done. We tend to rotate them in toward the end. Next week, I'm doing a whole security deal where we're going to be doing security information. We're doing virtual agents, chatbots, mobile programming, Dataverse. I'm going to dive in. But I wanted you to see in red, I've taken the Power BI stuff and I've broken it into just focusing on data analytics, how to create these beautiful dashboards, how do you write DAX formulas. So I can't give you an entire 8-hour class in a single 90-minute presentation. So I break the content out, and these are ongoing. And I'm hoping what you're going to do is you're going to love today's content, and you're going to come back again and again and again. It's free. I've done these for many, many years, and we get the attendance up, especially Power BI drives a huge attendance. But just so you know, check your schedule and go look. You can register for these future events right now. We'll send you reminders as they come close. But this is more Power BI content that's kind of coming down the line. And there's other great stuff out there. Okay, so I made this claim. Power BI is going to be the default reporting tool for all Microsoft products. That's the concept. To understand why, it really helps to kind of understand Microsoft's biggest competitor, which is Tableau. Some of you, I'm sure, use Tableau. And I'm going to say right off the start, Tableau is an awesome, awesome product. I am not going to say anything negative about Tableau. They are a great, great deal. What's interesting is Microsoft reps absolutely don't have a problem talking about Tableau. I've been in Microsoft sales calls where they've actually told the customer, hey, in this case, it kind of makes sense for you to use Tableau. They don't see it as a big competitive threat. They don't get all bent out of shape if you mentioned it on a call. But here's the thing, Tableau was actually founded in 2003. And as I put here, Microsoft built Power BI originally in 2000, actually they started about 2007 as add-ons to Excel. Then 2010, Excel 2010, Excel 2013. They kept adding more and more of these products in. By 2019, Microsoft moved it out of Excel and created their own product, their own Power BI product. And they actually moved it over into what they call the Dynamics family. Well, here's the interesting part. Tableau was acquired by Salesforce in 2019. They spent $15.7 billion. And so what happened is Tableau was really kind of rocking it. It's doing a great job. And as I said, great product. But Salesforce bought it. And what they're really going to use it for, similar to what Microsoft's using it for, is this kind of universal reporting tool. It does a great job of visualizing data. Here's the difference. Salesforce can do that for Salesforce, and I'm sure they'll do a fantastic job. It'll be awesome. Tableau will be the reporting tool for Salesforce. But what Microsoft is doing is making it the sales reporting tool for everything in the Microsoft family of products. So if you count up how many products Microsoft has shipping right now, I'm not talking about independent versions, there's over 200 products in the Microsoft catalog. They all 200 will use that single reporting tool. So Tableau, Salesforce, great. I think it was a brilliant decision by Salesforce to do that, and it'll be an awesome reporting tool. But in the Microsoft case, from a Power BI perspective, it'll now have such a wider impact because there's so many other products that'll all use Power BI as the reporting tool. So I always ask this. I think it's just kind of an interesting statistic. We're going to play a quick game. Use your chat window if you will, or you can use the questions. It doesn't matter. I'm asking the question, how many developers currently work on Microsoft Excel? So if you think about Excel's been a product now for 30 years, how many people are on there? Is it 10 developers? Is it 100 developers? Is it 1,000 developers? How many people do you think actually work on this? And we'll play the Price is Right closest without going over wins an imaginary prize, because I don't have anything to give away. So use your chat window real quick, or use your questions and just take a guess. Let's see who comes up with the closest answer. And I know there's a few Fuji employees you guys can play too, unless you already know the answer. Christina says 500. That's excellent. Any other thoughts? She may win by default if no one else types an answer in. I don't see anyone else typing an answer in. So okay, well, I'm not gonna belabor it. Christina, you win 1 million imaginary points. Responsibly spend them wherever you can. But woohoo! She says, all right, that was great. So the answer, she was a little over. The answer is there's about 10 developers that work on Excel. There's about 8 developers that work on Microsoft Word. There's a couple that work on PowerPoint, etc. I was surprised. I met these teams. Dave Malcolm used to be the product manager for Excel. He was a good friend of mine. I went up and I met the Excel team, and I walked in thinking there'd be 100 people, and there were only just a couple people around the room, and that was it. That's all that they use. The reason I bring this up, if you did the same thing right now and you walked into the Power BI team at Microsoft, there would be over 287 people in that. Now, I don't have the latest statistic. It's probably over 300 by now, maybe even higher. But it's a massive, massive amount of developers. And I always tell customers, follow the money at Microsoft. Where they're putting money into developers, that's the future of where they're going. And so Microsoft has made it very clear, yeah, Excel will continue on, Word will continue on, PowerPoint will continue on, but they're putting all their investment time, money, acquisitions, you name it, into that Power BI group. And again, the announcement that just came out last week, which I'll spend a good deal of time talking about today, will show you some of the amazing, mind-blowing things that they've done. Again, I worry I sound like I'm sounding like a commercial for Microsoft. I promise you, I do not have to say nice things about Microsoft. I often criticize them because they do some pretty dumb things. But what I saw last week blew my mind, and I'm hoping you're gonna agree. So we'll get to a demo here real quick. This is all part of Microsoft Power Platform. So I mentioned this is important to understand. Microsoft took Power BI out of the Office family. It's no longer part of Excel. They've separated it entirely, and they moved it over into the Dynamics family of products. Dynamics is all the accounting solutions, CRM, the business enterprise type solutions. And so it was originally built as this kind of analytics tool that would work well with all the accounting and finance and everything else under the sun. What's happened over time, though, is this suite keeps growing and growing. Microsoft recently, for example, added Power Virtual Agents. Now they've added Power Pages. They keep plugging more and more stuff kind of into this model, and it's becoming its entire platform by itself. Power Platform, the way to think about this is this concept of low code, no code that everyone seems to be going with. It used to be I had to send developers to college, university, have them get 4-year degrees learning how to program, Python or Java or C# or whatever the case may be. And those people I would hire, and then they would build solutions for the company. And what's happened is that as they go on, you get this brick wall that's happened between organizations. So I've got the developers on one side of this, and I've got my business users on the other. I'm gonna tell a personal story real quick. One of my friends growing up, a guy named Sam Morrow, he and his wife, Michelle, both worked at JCPenney. JCPenney is a big department store in the United States. And they were buyers, they were SaaS programmers who were doing the buying for the stores. So store managers wanted to know what type of blue jean is coming back in style this year so they can get their inventory up and get ready to sell, and what color and what style, all that kind of stuff. So Sam and Michelle would run these queries all the time. What would happen is this typical kind of circle that you see here. The business user says, hey, I want to know what kind of jeans are going to be hot this year. So they'd run a report, they'd hand it back, and they'd say, well, no, this isn't what I wanted. I need it divided by color, and I want to know if bell bottoms are coming back or straight like jeans. And they keep going around, and they keep going around. And Sam and Michelle would say it would sometimes take 6 months before they could finally get the report exactly as what the business users wanted. Those business users were store managers inside those JCPenney stores. And if you wait 6 months before you get the results of your query, the season's over. You missed it, right? And unfortunately, JCPenney had some tough times, some tough years. I think they're starting to rebound now. But they had to close a lot of stores because I think part of it was this crazy cycle. Many companies, almost every single company that I talked to recognizes this is a real problem. It takes forever. Developers are swamped. COVID got them way behind. Now there's a 6-month backlog before they can even start doing some of these reports and analysis and data work. And so what's happened is this is just killing the business. And so what Microsoft has done is come out with this thing called a citizen developer. They're basically going to the business users and saying, we're going to make our tools so easy to use with just drag and drop features that you'll now be able to do 90% or so of the design work yourself without the need of using a developer. Now everyone says, oh great, all the developers are going to get fired. No, that's not what's going to happen, and that's not what's happening at all. What's happening is business users now can contribute and get all the formatting and fonts and colors and all the design look done by doing simple drag and drop. And now those developers can just work on that last 10%, the data connectors, the update facilities, all the kind of data factory, data lake stuff that they need to do to make sure the whole solution works. They have to work together, but now their capacity is immensely lifted. And not only is it lifted, you could say, well, why don't I, if 90% of the work just went away, why don't I get rid of all the developers? Because now you've opened it up so many more people can go get those reports and get that analysis. So the demand for the developer actually grows by taking some of the work off the developers' plates. I know that seems counterintuitive, but that's exactly what's happening. We've seen that time and time again. I'll give you just real quick one quick example. I had to go present to the National Teachers Association. This was a long time ago. It was back in the 90s. And they were very upset because I think it was Windows 3.1 or Windows 95 or 98, I don't remember. They included a webcam. And we're using a webcam right now. We use them all the time. But when webcams first came out, the teachers fought for thinking about it. They said, you know what, if webcams come out and everyone can use a computer and a webcam, why do you need teachers? We only need 12 teachers nationally, and they'll just broadcast via webcams, and everyone's going to go fire all these teachers, and no one's going to have a job. And that's kind of the emotional response that people have when I say, hey, developers are going to have 90% of their work done by business users. And everyone throws up their hands and says, oh, Microsoft's killing off developers. What Microsoft's actually doing is creating a 10x increase in the demand for developers, just like the scenario I just gave you with teachers, right? If I give you a webcam, when suddenly webcams came out, and yes, kids could actually dial in and watch a teacher on a webcam. Did we lose all the teachers in our countries because these webcam technologies came out? No. When the webcam technologies came out, suddenly learning was easier to get access to, so the demand for learning went 10x more than it had ever been. And the reality is, it's more than 10. We have like 50 times more teachers today than we had just like 10, 15 years ago. So again, seems counterintuitive, but I promise you, the easier you make it to replace developers, the more demand that's going to be out there for developers. They're going to be doing more deeper work and more stuff. ChatGPT is not going to kill off all the developers. It can write code, but it's going to create even more demand for even more developers. I think they're safe. All right, enough of that, but just so you understand. So we have citizen developers now. Those are business people that can make all this stuff. Low code, no code. I'm going to show you that. We have the pro developers who can still need it, right? I can't build this all. Citizen developers can't do it all. They can get me a good portion of the way there, but I still have to have those professional developers to tie it up. But it lowers their workload. So now they only have to do a small percentage of this. And then finally, we have IT pros that kind of maintain the systems, keep it all going. All right, let's show you some demo. That's enough slides. I will come back to the slides when I get to the new announcements from Microsoft. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the ability to create just about anything that you want. I'm going to go out here and show you, this is, I've logged into my Power BI account. We're going to talk about, for those of you that have been working on Power BI and you're going, what the heck happened? This entirely changed just from a week ago. These are those announcements that we're gonna spend some time on today. This is all the new stuff that you're seeing over here. But it's very jarring. If you've been working for a long time, you're like, what happened to my dashboard? It's totally different. This is a typical dashboard. This is taking lots and lots of data and allowing you to visualize it with, in this case, a map. So these are cancer indexes per 100,000 people. You can see in my state, we're not doing so well. We're deep red. California is actually in the black. They have a high cancer rate. And we can actually go in here and sample this. And so we can say, we'll show it by area, most major areas affected, most minor area. Alaska actually has the fewest cancer rates. And it's breaking them out by male and female. And I can do all kinds of stuff. Cancer rates, mortalities. I can break it down by adults and infants. I can click it. This is a typical kind of report that we're talking about. I want to take bazillions of pieces of data and make use of them in some way and do some analysis and do some analytics on it and bring it back. And so this allows me to publish out a dashboard that you're seeing here. It's interactive, so it allows me to pull these down. I want to see, okay, what about brain and other nervous system cancers? You'll notice as I click, the dashboard just moved. Interestingly enough, whites have a significantly higher brain and nervous system cancer rate. And I want to see colon and whatever else. I just keep clicking through this, and it'll allow me to take all that data, crunch it down, and put it into an easy visual. This dashboard can be created by a non-developer. This dashboard can be built by someone who has no deep university level skills on how to do this stuff, but knows how they want it to look. They know how they want it to feel. And again, as I said, they can do about 90% of this. I also want to show you, by the way, this is up here. You can play on this. This is one of the samples. If I go back to the sample page, this is this Explore This Data Story, Cancer Statistics in the US. When you log into your powerbi.com account, so if I go to portal.office.com, I log in with my credentials and you load up Power BI, this is the screen you'll see. It's right here at the top. But there's some other really cool ones. You can see some statistics, explore, and the best part is you can open up any one of these and you can kind of see how Microsoft put these together so you could build it yourself. But what's starting to happen in this Power BI world, because this is more than just a data analytics, I can actually build these amazing reports and interactivity even when it's not all statistically based. Let me show you this one. So this is the most useful productivity tips. Again, it's a Power BI dashboard. And what they've done here is they put some real simple stuff in here. They said, all right, talk about your productivity scale. In other words, where you think you are on the low and the high end of your productivity, or where you want to be. And as I move the scale around, it's giving me areas. Well, first off, it says, how hard do you want to work? Do you just want to do the easy stuff? So I can hit moderate, and you'll notice it filtered it out, or I can say I want to see the hard stuff as well. So it's totally up to you. And then I say, what do you need help on? I need help with administration work. I'm not good with distractions. I need email help, and I want to do some time management. And so as I pick and choose, it's just filtering this data. And what it's doing is it's coming up and giving me the impacts that it's going to have, these hacks will have on my productivity. And then I see them here and I say, okay, I need to do the 2-minute rule. I don't even know what the 2-minute rule is. Let's click on it. And then it says, if a task can be done in less than 2 minutes, don't write it down or put it in the system, discuss it or think about it, just do it. So it's giving me coaching on how to get past this and apply this hack. And then I have links to go even further, and I have information. So again, what I'm showing you is it's not all just statistics and analytics. It's an interface that I can build that can bring out training. It can point me to resources in my organization. It can help me in any way, shape, or form. And it can be built by someone who has no technical skills necessary to make this stuff work. So I'm showing you this now on the online version of Power BI. Let's go deep. I'm going to get technical now on Power BI desktop. So this is the exact same product feature I was just showing you, except I've used the download capability. Let me show you where that is. If I go back to Power BI, you'll see up here I can download the report. I can go in here and click. Here's all the settings. Here's all the information, everything else that I might want. If I go back to my home screen, you actually have a pull down here where you can download. Oh, they moved it on me. I'll find it in here. But anyway, there's a download button where I can download Power BI. If you don't find it right here, it's really easy. You can just put in Power BI download. Download, there we go. Actually, I'm in the wrong box. I'll do it up here. Power BI download, and there it is, Power BI download desktop. You click, and here it is, downloads for Power BI. So you just download it from here. The product is free, okay? So Microsoft delivers this in Office. If you have an Office 365 subscription, you get this, or Microsoft 365 subscription, you'll get Power BI as part of it. They also have Pro and Premium versions that they can upsell you with, which includes some advanced features on AI, connecting to disparate databases, stuff like that. We'll save that for another time. There's a lot there. But for, let's again say 90% of what you need to do, you can use the free version that comes with your Office subscription. And that's what I'm doing. So once you download that version, you'll have your own application on your desktop that you can play around. I have built, and I've shown this before, some of you might have seen this before, but I've just built some really cool looking dashboards, and I wanted to show people how you don't have to use the same kind of ugly, it's like PowerPoint. You see the same blue slides over and over again. I get sick of it. I want to customize it. I want to make it look a lot better. So I put some borders, some shading, I put some different stuff. It's completely interactive. So again, I want to just look at women's shoes. I click on women, you'll see all the data, the charts all update. If I say I want to look at women's dress shoes, so again, it's all updating. I want to see women's dress shoes in gray, green, and brown. Oops. Sorry, my Apple Watch is trying to talk while I'm in the middle of the presentation. So I check those three. And you can see now just gray, green, and brown for my different divisions are all showing up. So all the data is available. This is over 1 million pieces of data all being displayed in a simple interface. And again, I designed the interface and I built this in no time. I have a future Power BI class that's going to teach you how to do this. There's some neat tricks that I discovered that make it really, really fast, work really well. By the way, I also did a white version of this, completely different, looks completely different. So right now I have this set up for Chicago. If I put it back to all of my cities, you'll see this is actually a graph. So I can see the percentage of each city and how they're doing. I get the total number of shoes sold in these shoe stores, the amount of profit. I can see ranked by how they're doing over a 7-year period of time. So these are all custom visuals that are built, but they don't have to look like that, you know, standard ugly PowerPoint kind of deal. You could go totally crazy and design these and make them look beautiful. Come back for my future session. I'll teach you all the tips and tricks to do this. But let's jump out of this. Let's jump a step back and let's build something entirely from scratch, because that's really where this stuff is going to happen. Now, what I'm going to show you in this demo, there's a little bit of, we might need some developer, but most of this is going to be this low code, no code stuff that I've been talking about. So I'm going to show you a mix of the two, because I want to make sure you understand how it all goes. I'm going to jump back to my PowerPoints for just a second so I can kind of lay out how this stuff works. Go to this slide and we'll launch this. Okay, so it's important. This is the why. And by the way, I'm going to throw out a quick disclaimer. And my quick disclaimer is what I'm about to show you is changing in the new world, but it's still critically important that you understand what I'm about to show you. I thought about it. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't show this. Maybe I should kill it. No, you really need to learn this so you get a good understanding of where Microsoft's going with this. A traditional database, let's take a SQL Server or an Oracle, I would have an enterprise database, and everyone connects to that and grabs their data. So Sam and Michelle, or you know, my citizen developers, my people out here, in this case, I think I call them Mark and Shannon. And then I also have my pro developers. They're all pulling off that same single data source, okay? The problem here is, here's Mark. Mark likes to refer to, in the United States, we have what we call zip codes, right? That's your code to get your bills and stuff sent to your house. It's a zip code. But Shannon, she grew up in a different part of the country, and they call it a postal code. The devs always think of it as a mailing code. These are all valid terms for the thing, the 5-digit number that helps your mail get to you in your inbox. It can be called a zip code, it can be called a postal code, it can be called a mail code. And you've seen these before, right? You call it a cell phone, I call it a mobile phone, someone calls it a secondary phone or whatever. There's all these different names. This causes a problem when we do analytics, because Mark decides, I'm tired of calling this a mailing code. He changes the name of the data header in here from mailing code to zip code, and suddenly all the reports and all the data that we're pulling off that enterprise data are still looking for the old name, but Mark's changed it to zip code, and now his report works and everyone else's blows up. And it causes big issues, right? And so the way they handle this is the professional developers just cut off access. Mark can't change the name. Mark can't fix some of the problems that occur with his data and his source, because we don't trust him, because he's going to go mess up the enterprise data and then everyone else is going to get screwed up. And so organizations just shut down and limit the functionality of these very large databases, and they don't allow people to make changes because of this potential happening. When Power BI came along, what Power BI did is they took a different approach. So rather than Mark directly accessing this enterprise data, when he goes to Power BI and he loads it up and he goes to get his data, Power BI uses an external tool called Power Query. I'm going to show you this live in a second. It looks like it's inside of Power BI, but it's not. It's a completely separate tool, but it's integrated so tightly they look like the same thing. What's interesting is this Power Query is also the same Power Query that you run when you're in Excel and you try to connect to data. So they both go to an outside source called Power Query, they load it up, And that's the thing that does the extract, transform, and load commands, basically running against your backend enterprise data. So in Mark's case, what he does is by loading Power BI, Power BI loads up Power Query. Power Query connects to the enterprise database. Mark says, okay, here's all the records I need. Here's what I need to be working on. And what it does is it takes that subset of records and brings it back to Power Query and creates a data cube for Mark. Mark actually now has his own subset of data in his own data cube. The reason that's a good thing is because once Mark has this, he can change it all he wants to. He wants to call it a zip code, he changes it to zip code. He wants to change it from mobile phone to cell phone, he can do that. He wants to change the order. And what happens is Power Query understands the changes that Mark has made and never pushes those changes back to the enterprise data. That allows the pro developers and Shannon and anyone else who's still working against the enterprise data, it doesn't affect them at all because Mark has his own copy of the data that he can now massage and change and transform in any way he wants to, okay? This solves a lot of problems. This makes life really cool because Mark now has his data. Secondarily, Shannon is Mark's boss, and Mark wants to share this data with Shannon. If they were attached to the enterprise data is always updated. Literally, I could do a report in the morning, and by the afternoon, the report is completely changed because all the back-end data was being changed in real time. The advantage of a data cube, though, is when Mark makes his data cube, he now owns that data. He decides when he wants to refresh the data. So anytime he wants to, he hits the refresh button. It'll go back to the enterprise database, grab the latest versions. Even though the enterprise database still calls it a postal code or mailing code, Power Query knows when I bring it back, I'm going to change its name back to the way Mark wants it, and he'll build a refreshed version of his data cube. He controls exactly when that data gets updated. This allows Mark to now share with his manager, Shannon. And so he's going to send Shannon the file, and it's called a .pbix. I'll show you exactly how we do this in a second. That file, don't get confused, a PBIX is nothing more than a zip file. It's just another extension of zip. And what it's doing is it's taking the entire data cube and zipping it together with all the reports that Mark makes, and it's handing them as one file over to Shannon. So she's going to see it exactly as Mark intended it to be. The data won't be updating because Mark didn't run an update. It isn't automatic. There isn't anything else. So she sees the data in the reports exactly as kind of a snapshot in time. As of this morning or as of May 1st or whatever, here's where our data was. And so it's protected, it's away. She now gets that version and she can see exactly how it was. Where if back in this scenario, he made the reports, handed it to her, but the reports were live against the database, whatever trends or whatever might be changing by the time she opens the email, and now it's completely different than what he sent to her in the first place. You could argue that's a good thing, you could argue that's a bad thing, but this is how Power BI up till last week has actually done this, and it's important to note. Remember that you can use your question windows, you can use your chat windows. Make sure you understand this though, because we're going to build on this as we go. So let's see this live in action. I'm going to go back to my desktop version of Power BI. I'm going to just go ahead and close down this one, and we'll open up a brand new one and create a new report. So I'm starting entirely from scratch now. And the first thing that pops up is this, hey, look at what's new. I get some training videos automatically from Microsoft. It'll check to make sure my version has been updated to the latest version. It'll give me tutorials. It'll give me sample files. There's a lot here that you can kind of check out. We'll have to save that for another day. But for right now, the first thing I want to do is go get my data. And remember, my data could be on an enterprise server. It could be an Oracle server. It could be SAP. It could be Salesforce. It could be SQL Server. When I say get the data, it opens up the connectors, and you'll see there's tons and 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 tons of connectors out there, and they're adding more all the time. For those of you that are astute Power BI users, you'll notice they added in a brand new one called Microsoft Fabric. We'll talk about this in just a little bit. This is the announcement from last week. But for now, we're just going to keep it simple. I'm going to go grab an Excel workbook that I have. But don't get confused. This could be a SQL server. This could be a monstrous, 5 terabyte Terra server. Whatever you need to have access to, there's a connector out there that can make that happen. But I'm going to connect to Excel. I've got one that I use in my classes. We do an analytics class where I teach a full day of how to write DAX code and build these stuff. It's really cool. I'm going to attach to that. And so what just happened is it's now loaded the Power Query. So remember I told you when you run Power BI, it leaves Power BI and it loads up this separate tool. That's what you're seeing right here. It's looking at the Excel spreadsheet and it's giving me these are called defined names. You see the little blue line at the top, table 4, table 5, reps 2, color 1, etc. And then below it, you see this icon has these little tabs under it. These are the tab pages inside my database. They're the same. If I click on colors, you'll see it gives me a preview of the data. And if I click on the named region called colors, it gives me the exact same data. It's just whether I want to pull it by the page that it's on or pull it by the table name that it's under, but they're all the same. I tend to like the pages just because it's very complete. So I want the colors page. I want the rational data. I want the reps page. I don't need this one. This was just something I was dorking around with. So I'm going to grab the stores page. So I picked 4 of these tables that I want. And notice that this allows me 2 options. Option 1 to load the data, meaning I just suck it into Power BI and start working. But remember what Mark wanted. Mark wanted to change some of the names. He didn't like cell phone. He wanted to change it to mobile phone or vice versa. He didn't like zip code or postal code or whatever. So we're going to click the transform data, and this is going to pull up Power Query. So you'll notice it still looks like I'm in Power BI. It's just like a window inside of Power BI, but this is actually a separate product. And this is the same product that you would run if you were in Excel or even in Word connecting to a backend database. It's a uniform extract, transform, and load program that Microsoft uses to interface between our data. So now that I have it loaded, you can see it's got me, it's building a data object, a data cube that's going to be my personal cube that I can start messing with. So here are the different tables, the colors table, the relational data, the sales, the stores. Let's go in here and jack around with some of this. One of the things I don't like, there's this sales ID. And first off, I don't like the word relational. This is our sales table. So let's just right click on this. I'm going to rename it and I'm going to call it the sales table. Now, again, if I had done that against the enterprise data, I just would have blown up everyone trying to work with that enterprise data. And again, chances are that my development staff and my IT staff won't even give me privilege to do that. But once I pull it over as my own data cube, I can mess with it all I want. So I just renamed that to sales. Now I have a sales ID field, and now it's really confusing because one of the things is called sales ID. So I'm going to rename one of these columns. We'll go in and rename this. This should be the sales rep ID because I'm going to join these to the sales reps. I don't like the position. I'm going to grab it and move it on. I can keep changing this as much as I want. I can change the type of data, the style, the format. I can add in new data. I can take out columns I don't need. It's totally up to you how you build this, because whatever I apply in here, it's going to apply to my data cube. Remember that the data cube through Power Query has to remember the way it is on the enterprise side and the way me, the user, wants it, and it has to be able to translate between those at any given time. It's doing that right now. You might not notice, but you'll see under here they have this section called Applied Steps. Applied Steps is a macro language that's recording every single thing that I do. So instead of cost, just to show you, I'm going to go rename this column again. I'm just doing something simple to make sure. So I'll make it from cost to cost. Watch what happens when I hit enter. You're going to see a brand new step appear over here. So if I hit enter, it now said it renamed columns 1. So it knows in the macro language that I just renamed this column. If I pick it up and move it, then it comes in, it says you just reordered the columns. This code, this programming language is called M code, M as in Mary, the letter M. And you can actually see the M code by going up here to the advanced editor. When I click on advanced editor, this is writing out all of the M code for me. And if you've ever done Visual Basic programming or macro programming or C#, this should look very, very familiar. Now, again, this might be beyond your skills of your business development people, your citizen developers, but I do want to show this because this is critically important. So you can see exactly what happened. I reordered the columns, and now it shows me the order that it translated it from the way it was on the enterprise side to now the way it is in my model. I renamed the column cost to costs with an S, and then I reordered it again. And I could go in here and say, let's just edit it here. I want to change this to my costs. It's just text that I'm seeing here. And when I say done, you'll see it blew up because I messed that up. Let me go backwards. Sorry, it should have worked, but let's go ahead and take that out so we don't kill everything. Oh, I know why. The reason why is because it's already run. There is no cost table. It's now costs. So if I wanted to, I could change this to cost. Should now be my costs. That's why I forgot I already ran it. And I have to spell this right. Some of you probably already figured out. And I hit done. And I've totally messed this up. My bad. We're just gonna keep going because it'll take me. I don't want you to sit here and watch me edit this. So I can go back in here. Let's just change it back to the way it was. The problem here, just so you understand, is I ran it. So I already made the change, and now I'm trying to program it the way it was, and it's not that way anymore. Let's see if this works now. Hopefully this will. There we go. Now we're back to normal. Okay, so why is this so cool? Well, I could, when I was doing analytics for Microsoft, and I did for about 7 years, I was doing reports back to the executives. I was taking 2 weeks to take the Microsoft sales data, transform it in with the proper headers and match up the data correctly and do all the stuff that I had to do. Then I'd take 2 weeks to build my reports. This was before Power BI. I was doing this back in Excel. I would send it up to the execs. They'd say, this is great. And then as soon as that month's report was submitted, I had to work on the next report, and I'd have to go back and spend another 2 weeks reformatting the data, getting it all right, and then 2 weeks of preparing the data. And I just kept that cycle going, and it was maddening. What I can do is one time only, I can set all this stuff up. Now that I have this, I can just copy this and email it to myself or save it in the text box or whatever else I want. I'm gonna delete this right now. I'm gonna say I'm done. And you'll see it's errored out. It's like I don't have anything. Let's imagine I submitted my last report, and now all the data has changed. It's now got the new month of June is about to start, and I got to do the next month's report. Rather than spend 2 weeks to get all that formatting correct, I can go into the advanced editor, and I can just paste in the text that I had previously. There we go. I just paste it in, and I say done, and it all comes back. And it's all reformatted, but now it's got all the new data applied to it. This is mind-blowing, and I'm not exaggerating for emphasis. I literally almost cried when I realized I could do this, because this saved me 2 weeks every single time, 2 weeks worth of work every time I had to create a report, because you just save it, reuse it again, but now it's reflected with the new data. Because remember, when I go back to do the next month's data, I have to go back to the enterprise server and I have to rename everything and remove everything. Some of these, you know, when you looked at the M code, some of the work was 200 lines long. We had to do a lot to fix our data to get it ready to go for these reports. Once I do it once, you copy the M code, you save it, and you just keep reapplying it month after month after month. The data gets updated with new pulls of the data, but all those changes are instantly recorded in the macro language. I'm hoping that that makes sense for everyone. That is a major, major feature. And M code is not hard to learn, just like how I learned to do Excel macros and Word macros. You just turn on the recorder, you do a bunch of stuff, and then you go back and look at it and go, okay, I see what they're doing here. And that's how you kind of learn. Same thing with MCode. Just do a bunch of data analysis, do changes, and then go back and look at the code. Like, okay, now I get how they do it. It's pretty simple stuff when you kind of read through it. But very, very powerful, okay? Once I get all this done, I've now got it all formatted the way I want. I'm gonna hit close and apply, and we're gonna get out of Power Query, and what you're gonna see happen is it's going to build that data cube for me. And this data cube will exist on my computer. It will build this inside. So right now it's building the data cube, attaching those tables on the enterprise server. In this case, it's an Excel sheet, but you know, it could be an enterprise server. It's pulling the data across. You're seeing the data numbers come across. And then once it's done, I'll be attached inside of Power BI with all of this enterprise data. This is a big database. As I said, it's over 1 million records. I'm going to build an even bigger one here shortly. So there it goes. And you can see now it's connected in. And I know I'm connected because I can see my data over here. I can see the colors, the reps. Notice that it came in as sales. Remember, this is an entire table that I renamed. And now there's all my sales data and my store data and everything else. Once I have this data is now locked in my data cube. It is not going to change. So imagine we are pulling retail sales. From this moment on, I'm not seeing any of the new retail sales. However, anytime I want to, I can go up to the menu bar here and just hit refresh. I'll go ahead and do this, even though we just pulled the data. It's going to go back out, reconnect, pull the data again, using all those MCode stuff to make sure it looks and formats the exact same way I want to. But now this time I'll get a whole new refresh of the data. So again, once you have this built, I can just go back once a month and hit that refresh button, and now I pull all new data sets in without me having to write any special Transact SQL code or anything else. There's one more thing I have to do. We're not going to get into this just because we don't have time. There's so much to discuss. But we do need to go in and model this data only because this came from Excel. Excel is going to try to marry up the different parts and pieces because it's a flat file database in Excel, and we're trying to convert it over into a relational database. And I teach classes on this, and I'm glad to take people through it. I'll do it in another webinar. But what we need to do is we need to go in here and we need to manage these relationships. We need to set this up. And what happens is, because of the way I purposely name these so that it would do some screw ups. So I'm just going to edit this for time. I'm going to say that the color ID needs to equal the color ID. So I'm just matching those two columns, and we'll say, okay. I'm going to go to the reps ID. Again, I purposely made this screw up so I could show this in my demo, but I want the reps ID. It's trying to map it to the sales ID. That's not right. We want to go to sales rep ID, and now those two columns match. And the last one should be fine, I think. Store ID now equals store ID, so that's okay. Okay, so the relationships are now set. We're done. That's the work that your professional developers do need to kind of get set up one time only. So I've connected to the database. I used my MCode to transform it the way people want to, and now I can build this relationship, save it, and hand it out, and my users can now go to town. Everything from this point forward really is the low code, no code stuff I was talking about. So if my users want to build a report, all they have to do is go grab any of this data. I always like to use this line chart. We'll pull the line chart out. This is an object on my page. And I'm going to shrink some of this down so I can show you a little more screen real estate. Every object has these handles, so I can resize them and move them, just like Word, just like Excel. And just like a pivot table, all I have to do to display the data is take the data from the tables and drop it into these little pivot chart holder things. So what I'm going to do, I always tell my classes, start with the most important thing. I want to see the actual sales price of the shoes that I have. So that's kind of the value that I am putting it in. So we put that in the y-axis. And when I do that, you'll notice it just comes out with a single dot. Now, I told you this is 1 million records inside this database. And if I hover over this, is telling me, okay, I've done $87 million in sales, but I have no reference to which store did this, which rep did this, over which time period. This is 7 years worth of data that amounts to this 87 million. So I just keep dragging and dropping. I want to see the stores. Now, because these tables are all related, you saw me just a second ago relate these tables, I can now take the current stores from the stores table, and this is related back to the sales. So when I drag and drop it into the legend, you'll now see each one of the stores has its own dot. New York is green. I hover over New York, and I can see exactly they did $6.3 million in sales, right? This is great. Now it's giving me the lump sum by store, but I still want to see this over time. So I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to take the sales date and I'm going to put that on our x-axis so I can see it kind of spread across. And now you'll see these big, crazy, squiggly lines. I see some interesting data up here, a massive spike for one of them. I see a huge drop down here. So I'm already seeing some analytic data that I might want to go into. Now this is listed by year, quarter, month, and day. And I can say, you know what, I don't want it quite that detailed. I can drill up the data. Now I'm looking by month. I drill up the data again. By the way, look at that big drop right there. See, that's interesting. It's kind of hard to see with all these other things. So what I want to do in the power of Power BI is the ability to drag and drop filters on this page. There's a little filter icon here, and I just click. It's called a slicer. And I tell it, what do you want to slice by? I want to slice by current store. And now if I say, show me Dallas, show me Chicago, show me Charlotte. Look at that huge drop that happened in Charlotte. I need to investigate and figure out what's going on there. I've got another one here, kind of bounced up and down. So some crazy stuff there. There's Boston, here's Atlanta. Wow, huge drop in Atlanta. So what I'm doing is I'm taking millions of records, and in seconds, I can visualize and see, and I can find these outliers, these huge dips where I wouldn't expect this to happen. Now I'm going to use Power BI to go dive in and analyze these. If I don't want them by store, maybe I want them by the region that they're in. I'm going to grab region instead. And I'm going to take out the current stores. Now I'm going to say, just show me the Northeast. And again, you can see it's only showing 4 stores that make up the Northeast. Here's the Northwest. Here's the Southeast. Here's the Southwest. So again, I could filter these out in different ways and see exactly what's kind of going on and slowly add in or remove or adapt data. This webinar is about Power BI becoming a universal data tool. And what Microsoft has done is via this drag and drop, they've made it incredibly easy to build report data that is interactive. I want to see it by region, but I also want to see it by stores. So I'm going to add another filter. In this one, I'm going to put the current store name. I also want to filter it out by maybe what type of shoe it is, the gender of the shoe. Just drag and drop. No programming here. This is all low code, no code. So you see I'm in Southwest. Notice that it's only showing me the 4 stores in the Southwest. If I go to Southeast, Atlanta, Charlotte, Louisville. If I go to Northwest, Chicago, Portland, San Francisco. What if I only want to see men's shoes in those stores? There's men's shoes in the 4 stores. What if I only want to see Chicago and Seattle? I'm holding the control key down. And now I'm just looking at those 2 stores compared to each other. Anything I build in Power BI, I can now publish out to my company. And if I give them permissions to get into it, whoever I give permissions can not only see this data, but they can interact with the data as well. So just to show you that, I'm going to go ahead and publish. So I'm going to go back up to my home. I've got it the way I want it. I can go change the color. I can add graphics. We can spend days teaching you how to do all this stuff. Again, plug, shameless plug. I teach great classes, all interactive, hands-on for every student. Every student is working on it all the time, but we teach how to do this. I'm going to go ahead and save the changes. It says, okay, what do you want to call this? I'll call it webinar, very critical name. Oh, by the way, shoot, I should have showed you that. When I saved at the bottom, you should have noticed I put it in as webinar, but it put it as webinar.pbix. What's a PBIX? It's a zip file, which means when I share this data with you or share this with anyone else in my company, they not only get my reports, but they're also getting the data cube itself so that the data I'm expressing to them is exactly the same as the data they're looking at, right? We talked about that. I'm going to post this up to my workspace. You can build your own workspaces. It supports Teams and SharePoint and everything else under the sun. It's going to go ahead and take this, and not only is it putting the report up, but it's actually moving the data cube up into the cloud. And I can go out, and now when I invite someone else to see this, I'm going to open this in the cloud, and this is what they would see. Again, making sure I am who I say I am. If I shared it with you, it would make sure that you have logged in before you could see this. And here we go. There's my reports, and it's fully interactive. I want to see Portland and San Francisco. I don't care about the Northwest. I don't care about men's shoes, but I want to see women's shoes. And I want to see Atlanta along with Charlotte, Boston, and Chicago. So full interactivity. This is all running in a web page. Hopefully you start to see some advantages of making this a universal reporting tool. If I can build it without having to write any code, just drag, drop, put it all the way in, make it interactive, and now publish it out and grant privileges to any single person or group or role or however else you want to do it. I can give my entire accounting team permissions to look at this. Or I can individually say, Veronica has my permission to not only view it, but she can go in and edit and make changes if she wants to. So you can get very granular control over who can and cannot do this type of work, okay? And so where's all this going? Well, now Microsoft has given you a unified tool that can do all that advanced analytics, that can do some amazing AI. We haven't even talked about that. I have a special webinar on AI. But it could do all this analytic stuff, analysis stuff, put it all together, and then I just say post it, and it posts it up to the cloud and gives everyone in my organization that I tell it I want to give access to can go ahead and get access to this automatically. This can actually extend further if we go into Microsoft Teams. I'm going to open up Teams here. Sorry, it opened in a different window. There we go. So here I've got my Teams. I'm in my marketing toolbox, and I'm under my analytic services. If I wanted to, inside of Teams, again, separate deal, but I could put my entire Power BI project inside of Teams. And it's going to go up here and say, okay, where do you want to do it? And how do you want I'm not going to go through all this right now, but I could embed that report right inside of Teams. Since I've already granted my permissions to Teams, anyone who access to the team site would now instantly have access to that report via a sales report or a shipping report or an inventory, whatever. We can just build it and deploy it in seconds, and instantly everyone has that. I don't have to go find it in mail. I don't have to worry about the version is different than the version that's posted. It's a single unified report that now is available to everyone inside my organization. All right. Now we're going to shift gears because I want to spend the last 30 minutes showing you what changed last week. And hopefully you have some good perspective onto how this is going to blow away the world. I'm telling you, even talking to Fuji people, I'm not sure they're getting how dramatic what happened is going on. So let me go through this. Now remember, this just happened. I will be building entirely new courseware and webinar material on this. But I had to do a kind of quick and dirty last night. So this is my quick and dirty. So we'll talk about changes as of last week. So this just happened on Tuesday and Wednesday is when Microsoft announced this. And I've already showed you this. If you go up and look at the portal, you're going to see all new icons, deployment pipelines, metrics, monitoring hub, OneLake. And you're going to be like, what is going on? What is all this stuff? Because Microsoft didn't let a peep of this out until last week. I think very few people knew about it. All right, to explain this, I'm going to go backwards. This is going to seem really weird, but I'm going to talk to you about OneDrive first. The reason I'm going to do this is I have discovered most organizations have no clue what OneDrive is. They think they know what it is, but when I get into them and I talk to them and I do my training classes and stuff, they're completely blown away because they were just using it as a simple tool and they didn't realize what was happening behind the covers. And I need to explain this to you because it has direct relevance to what Microsoft is doing. Here's how this works. Let's start on the right-hand side over here. I have a computer, I have an Office 365 subscription, and in there, by default, it has set up a OneDrive for me. So I have my Fuji account that I log in, has a OneDrive, and in there I store my Word and Excel and PowerPoint, all my stuff, all my docs go in there. What's happening with OneDrive is synchronizing all that up into the cloud, so that when I go out to portal.office.com, I guess I should show you that. Go back to my browser here. I'm just going to log in, portal.office.com. This logs me into my Office 365 account. And then I go up here and I say, hey, I want to go look at all my programs. One of them is OneDrive. This shows me all of my documents, but the ones that are stored out in the cloud. You can see there's just tons and tons and tons and tons and tons. I'm a good Microsoft person, so I keep all my stuff out in the cloud. So let's jump back. So what's happened is I have my local file OneDrive, but when I turn it on and I use it, it's going to take all those and keep a synchronized copy out here in the cloud. Fuji manages all the local stuff, right? That's my local computer. They have administrator access and they can deny or grant or whatever the case may be. That's all set up internally. But when I store it to OneDrive, it keeps a local copy, but it also duplicates that copy live out into the cloud. This is Fuji's cloud, but it's managed by Microsoft. So this is off of the Fuji domain, and that's kind of important here, right? Because it's off of the Fuji domain, a couple things are happening. Number one is each device, whether it's my desktop, my phone, my tablet, or any new devices that they're coming out, which might eventually be my refrigerator and my car and all that stuff, because they can connect to the cloud, they can go to the internet, they can get access to all my documents. In the early days of Microsoft, we used to do this thing every 6 months. We would destroy our machines. We'd literally F-disk the hard disk, kill it, and then we'd reboot. And Microsoft had this really cool script that would go back and systematically rebuild your system, cleaning up everything, optimizing it, making it run really fast, and it would reinstall all your programs. It took about 30 minutes to do. We'd go have a coffee. By the time we came back, our machine was back up and running, but the drives were all optimized, everything ran beautifully. It was wonderful. What Microsoft has done with OneDrive, however, is because I'm keeping all this in the cloud, let's say my cell phone gets lost or stolen, or my iPad gets crushed by a steamroller, whatever the case may be. The second I go buy a new device and I log into my Office account, which I have to do to get it started, it immediately goes up and says, oh, your local files are different than the ones in the cloud, and suddenly it rebuilds my entire environment back the way I had it before the steamroller killed it or before my device got stolen. Okay, it's literally instantaneous. It's incredibly cool. It does, I'm sorry, I say instantaneous. It happens instantaneously. It'll take a little time, just depending on how much data it's got to move over and the speed of your connection, but it builds all this stuff up. Now, I'm not going to put 5 terabytes of data on my iPhone. They're not large enough. So it does selective sync. I can say I want to keep these files on my iPhone, these files on my iPad, and on my desktop, I have a huge hard disk. Just give me all of them. And so it'll always keep them in sync. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to think about it. It just happens. And anytime I want to, I can go out to my cloud version, or if I'm disconnected from the cloud, I just go to my local version. Let's say I'm working on a spreadsheet, I'm on a plane and I lose internet connectivity. As soon as the plane takes off, I still have all my files. Nothing has changed. Keep working. The moment I land and the connection's reestablished, boom, the data gets updated and done. Last part about this, I appreciate you hanging with me, but this is important to understand, is because this is Microsoft's domain, they own the server, they own the Fuji cloud, right? They're the ones maintaining and managing it. I can take this file set and share it out with people outside of my organization. Now, this was a big no-no in the old world because I wouldn't allow someone from some other company to come into the Fuji domain and grant them network access to get access to our resources. IT would say, no way we're letting a foreign company come in and have access to all of our Fuji stuff. Used to have to do federation, used to have to do all kinds of stuff. It was a huge hassle. Well, because this is managed by Microsoft, it's a neutral site. And what that means is I can share an Excel file, let's say, with someone outside of Fuji. I'm working with the Microsoft teams right now, so I share it with one of my Microsoft cohorts. They can dial into the Microsoft cloud and access my single Excel file without ever seeing the rest of the Fuji network. My Fuji IT people, they don't care, because if I granted them access to that document, it's okay. They can go work in that document. That's perfectly fine. They're not going to see our Exchange server. They're not going to get into our database. They're not going to grab our customer list. They are completely cut off from that because they're on Microsoft's cloud, not on Fuji's on-prem environment. Hopefully that makes sense for everyone. Okay, so huge, huge advantage. Last thing, I won't go into this, but this is the part that no one knows about, is Microsoft enabled these apps to run concurrently, meaning I can have 100 people simultaneously open up that Excel file, and all 100 people can work at exactly the same time with almost no slowdown, cursors, mice, etc. It's the coolest thing. I do a whole nother presentation on that. I do have a webinar on that. I'd love to show you that, but we'll save that for another time. Mike, what does all this have to do with what Microsoft announced last week? Well, let's get into it. Microsoft announced this thing called OneLake. OneLake is the exact same concept I just showed you with OneDrive, a single location to put all your documents. Microsoft is now making a single location to put all your data. Okay, same concept that I just explained, but now as it applies to data. Number one, it's currently in preview. They've announced it. They're letting customers play with it. You can go get a free account and go spend time, as I'm doing, really learning it and understanding it, and it doesn't cost a penny. It's completely free right now, but it's not yet been released to production, so keep that in mind. What is it? It's a single, unified, logical data lake for the whole organization. I want to take a step back and point out the first part of that. It is a single data lake for your whole organization. That means you get one and one only. And you're going to say, wait a minute, I want my Oracle data to come in, and I've got some stuff in SQL, and we merged with this company that is CRM and a bunch. I need to pull all that in. You will be able to do that, but you're going to keep it in one single unified and, most importantly, governed data source. So my IT department now has one control to put all the security, governance, backup, disaster recovery, everything out there. And you're going to say, oh, Microsoft's forcing everyone to go to one database. No, that's not what they're doing. Just like OneDrive, they're not forcing you to use a particular program, this or that or the other thing. Some of the Adobe products now can do all the synchronization with OneDrive. Some of the other third-party tools now work just like Microsoft products. Microsoft makes it open. They publish exactly how to do it. They're doing the same thing with OneLake. It's not forcing you to get rid of your database. It's just giving a single point to put all that data. You'll still have your Oracle database. You'll still have SAP. You'll still have everything else that you have. But now all the data from those enterprise databases gets coalesced into a single repository that's going to be called OneLake. Now, we could spend a really long time getting into this, and I need a little time to make sure I can answer a lot of the Q&A that you're going to have. But at a very high level, so you understand, you can set up workspaces. One database and only one database. You will never have two instances of OneLake installed in your environment. You only get one, but you can build workspaces independent. So I could say, this is my finance workspace, or this is my retail operations, or whatever, and build kind of your subset of data inside your data lake in those different groups. So you can segment them and do it. The real important thing, though, is all of the data now is controlled under one rule of security, one rule of governance. So I don't necessarily have to teach, oh, here's how you do it in Oracle, and here's how you do it in SAP, and here's how you do it, and all these other things, and They all work different ways and they're all whatever. That's fine. Keep those going, but have the data flow into a single unified tool that now is controlled all of the same way, no matter what the data source is. It makes IT's job 1,000 times easier. It also is going to make analytics job 1,000 times easier. It's going to make all the stuff that I just showed you 1,000 times easier, and we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, this is different than what I just talked about with Power BI. Power BI, we said we don't want to touch a single source of the enterprise. We want to create our own data cube, and we want to do the extract, transform, and load on that. We want to keep that separate to ourselves. There are some extreme benefits of doing that. Okay, and Power BI will still do that if you want that. But what Microsoft has done with this data lake is they've now created another product I'm going to talk about called Microsoft Fabric, which allows you to have that same capability of having your own data cube while still being attached to the OneLake, if that makes sense. So let me go to my next slide, see if I can explain this a little better. All right. Microsoft Fabric, the reason they call it Fabric is the idea of stitching together multiple data sources to work as a single entity. Okay, so you can take disparate data sources, both structured and unstructured data, and you can merge it into a single OneLake to give this unified access that I was talking about. That means if your company has been an Oracle shop for years and years and years, and you just acquired another company and they're a SQL shop, you don't have to try to merge all your SQL data over to Oracle or Oracle data over to SQL to get a unified database. You can now connect them into OneLake, and OneLake will merge the two as if they were one, giving one data set to your whole organization while still keeping the two separate databases on the outside. Once I get that merger set up, I can now do my extract, transform, load. I can do all my management in the OneLake without having to go back out to my subsequent enterprise applications and try to manage them there. Okay, it's going to solve a lot of problems. And it's just not one to the other. It's as many of those connectors that you saw, those hundreds of connectors to the data, all can be tied together to pull the data into a single unified OneLake. Okay, just like my files I do with OneDrive, I can now do with my data with OneLake. Why do we want to do this? Well, it makes the management a whole lot easier. More importantly than that, I watched a demo, and I encourage you, if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. This was the product announcement they did last week. It's out there on the Build conference. So look for Build 2023. And the keynote from Microsoft's CEO, Satya Nadella, it's the very first thing you're going to see. He shows this demo. They grabbed Power BI, they connected it to a OneLake. Now remember, it's not making its own data cube. It's a direct connection, and they were running queries against 3.5 billion records, and it was as fast as they could spin the thing, it was updating the data. And they didn't have a super nuclear computer desktop or anything of the sort. They have made the connection between Power BI and OneLake so optimized and so seamless, it was almost instantaneous when you grab records and do stuff. We work, one of our partnerships is with Incorda, and Incorda does a great job of this as well. They're kind of an intermediary between the data sources on the back end and Power BI, and they give you that really, really fast speed. It's a fabulous product, and again, in the future, I'll talk in depth. Incorda's not going away, still staying there, but OneLake is kind of doing that same thing where it's being able to front end all these back end enterprise databases, optimize it in such a way, and then give you this Power BI front end that instantly can access billions of records in sub-second fractions. And it blew my mind. It was totally amazing. Then on top of all of that, if that wasn't most strategic and most mind-blowing and everything else, so Microsoft has been moving to this new thing called Copilot. What is Copilot? I will do a whole nother webinar on Copilot. Right? My job is to get you updated on all this stuff so you know what's going on. And again, I'm hoping you'll come back and you'll ask me and you'll email me even after the show as you have questions. I'm learning, you're learning, but this is going to be I'm just fascinated with this stuff, and I will be a specialist on everything related to Fabric and OneLake and you name it. So anyway, feel free to ask me questions even after the event. But what Copilot is everyone's probably seen that Microsoft invested billions of dollars in ChatGPT, the OpenAI stuff. And I've been doing a lot of development in ChatGPT. I have a ton of demos I've been doing for customers. Veronica has one, I think tomorrow, that I'm showing them a new solution I built with ChatGPT. It's not what you think, right? We've all seen the web stuff where you can ask ChatGPT and it answers questions. What Copilot is now taking ChatGPT and extending it out in the analytical world. So ChatGPT can read my source data and come back and perform analytics and even tell me stuff I don't even know about my data. So this screenshot is an example, and I know it's too hard to see, but they show this again in the keynote that I talked about. They use Copilot tied to ChatGPT, and they say, I want you to go take my sales data that I have access to here in OneLake, and I want you to analyze it and show me a report that emphasizes retail sales of all my stores in North America over the last 12 years. And it builds the dashboard for you. So literally, I don't even have to drag and drop out controls. Now, it may not build it exactly as I want, so I can still go in and tweak it, and I can still do things. But this dashboard that you're seeing is one that just from text, I say, I need to see a revenue-focused dashboard with sales from this and that, and it just built the thing and put it all together. Again, you know, I don't want people to say, oh, there goes my job as a developer, there goes my job as an analyst. This is going to expand your job exponentially because now you're going to do things you never even thought you could do before, and you're going to use this power. But that's what Copilot is. It pulls in all the AI libraries, it matches it to this huge OneLake, and then together it allows developers and citizen developers to get the data they need incredibly fast, where they're not spending weeks trying to format, color, and design and do all that. As a matter of fact, the demo that I saw from Microsoft, not only did it build the dashboard, but after it built the dashboard, they typed it in and said, well, could you make it look like all my other corporate branded PowerPoints? And it knows what that is, and it goes out and takes all the color schemes and graphics and stuff, and suddenly the dashboard morphs to the color branded version of the company. If I did it for Fuji, it would all come in with our orange Fuji color, with our Fuji mountain and highlights. It just do it all without me having to do anything. This is mind-blowing stuff. I mean, it really is incredible. What I saw, I immediately turned and told people, if you understand what's happening behind the scenes, if you really appreciate where Microsoft is going with this, this is a game changer. I have 5 minutes. I do see a question. Can I get a recording of this webinar? I missed some parts of the session. I can't believe you missed it. No, absolutely. I'm going to follow up. I'm a huge believer in not spamming people. Man, I hate spam, and I know you hate spam, and I don't want to be a spammer. However, I will send you a link after this with a copy of the recording video. I will send you my slide deck, so you'll have that. And then we'll just follow up and see if there's any other questions, but I will not be annoying you or bugging you. And if I ever do, just say, hey, please stop emailing me, and I will mark you from my list. But I'm here to help keep sending out this information. I want to get people excited about it. I'm seriously thinking about forming a user group just on this because it's so awesome. And because I have almost 20 years at Microsoft, I get to call those guys up, and I can have the Microsoft people come on and do an individual session for us. So if you're interested in being a part of that user group, send me an email. I will be more than happy to add you. I'm pretty sure Fuji will want to support that. It's a huge opportunity, and it'd be a very exciting thing to be a part of. But I'm going to keep going more and more. You're going to see more of this stuff come out. I think that might be my last slide. Yeah, my last slide's just, again, remember that we're here to help you. We can build you dashboards. We can teach you classes on how to do it. We can teach you advanced DAX skills. We can help you build your data lakes and build your new OneLake and put all that stuff together. But we're not going to be super pushy, and we're not going to annoy you, and we're not going to abuse the privilege that you gave us by coming here today. So you'll get minimum interaction with us. I'll just send it if it's important. I hope you will reach out. My email, I probably should have put this on here. I think it's back on the front slide. So let me keep that up. I'll answer any questions. It's not. So I'll put it right here. It's michael.o@fuji.com. Remember, it's Fuji with an E. And that's really hard to see on the screen. So I will go egotistically really big so you all can see it. Okay, so that's my email. I will follow up. Usually it takes about an hour for the rendering of today's presentation to be done. And then by the end of today, you'll get a copy of the presentation. You get a copy of the slide deck. People ask all the time, can I invite others? Absolutely. Can I come back for multiple sessions? Absolutely. I've been doing this for a really long time. We're not going to charge. We're not going to do it. It's just a way to show you what skill sets Fuji has, help you find some of this newer, latest technology and get plugged in. Last thing before I will go to the Q&A, when you close out of today's session, it will fire off an eval form. It asks you just a couple of questions. How did I do as a presenter? Was the content any good? Would you recommend it to someone else? I think that's literally the questions we asked. I might put one more in there. But we try to keep it really short. That gives me feedback to know if I'm hitting on all the right cylinders. Okay, so I've got a couple count me in on the user group. Love that. Are there security concerns associated with utilizing ChatGPT under Public Copilot? Or are they walled off from any risk of proprietary data getting utilized by public-facing ChatGPT? Christina, what an awesome question. This is taking the majority of my time right now because the answer is you can absolutely set up your data so that you can use ChatGPT privately, where your data will never get sucked up into the ChatGPT collective. And what I'm doing right now is I'm literally working with some really intelligent, genius people at Fuji to build a customer demo to show this. The only reason it's taking long is because I need a terabyte worth of fictional data. And guess what? I'm using ChatGPT to make fake customers and fake addresses and fake everything. It just takes a little time to get this going. But this is the #1 thing that customers want to know. They want to use ChatGPT, but only internally, and they want to make sure that none of their corporate data gets sucked back up into the ChatGPT large learning model, and therefore exposed out to other people. So the answer is yes, you can do it. I actually attended a Microsoft training session just 2 weeks ago on using Azure and protecting this. We're in the process of building this right now for customer demos. And once I have that up, if you're interested, email me. And the second we have it running, we will set up a phone call for just you and your organization, and we'll take you through it. How do you do it? We'll show you how it's absolutely protected. It's what everyone's talking about. It's just amazing competitive advantage when you do that. So I love that question, appreciate it. Others of you are also interested in the user group. Christina says, got it, good to know, thank you. Yep, very good. This is all, it's in preview, as I mentioned, and it's coming. I will get on this. I will update all my webinar content. I will push this out. We're getting just massive demand from customers. And like I want you to feel free to contact me if you have any questions. You have my word. I'm not going to be overbearing or anything else, but I'd love to talk to you about it. If there's anything we can do that helps, great. If it's just you need a little push in the right direction, I'll push you in the right direction. We won't charge for that. But we would love to talk to you and do some of this, because this is some of the most exciting work that's out there. One more question, can Power BI pull from an external data source like a REST API? Absolutely. That's the beauty of this Microsoft platform, is they're exposing everything out for these external connectors, REST APIs, JSON queries. We haven't even talked about DAX. Microsoft also supports R-code inside of Power BI, a whole statistical graphing language. All of that's in there. It's just not enough time in a 90-minute session to go through it all. But great question.